Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and it would seem that yesterday, for a brief period of time, approximately 30 minutes of gameplay footage for Assassin's Creed Valhalla was leaked online. Upon seeing it and recognizing that these videos would disappear in record time, I chose to rush to download and save the leaked footage, and it's a good thing that I did, as when I checked barely an hour later, those videos had been removed. So, given I actually have the footage on hand, I thought it would be a good idea to discuss and critique some of the changes and updates that we can expect with the game. Now, bear in mind the video footage was in 720p 30 FPS and as such isn't the greatest in quality. I did run the videos through detail preserving upscaling in Adobe After Effects to be able to increase the quality to 1080p without as much detail loss as there would be from simply filling the frame, a process that took about 8 hours for the computer to complete last night. However, the video quality still isn't the greatest, and it is quite dark at times, so in areas where it's too dark, I will attempt to brighten it for some segments. It is also worth noting that this game is still very much a work in progress, and as such, some of this will undoubtedly be changed or freshened up a bit. However, there is a fair amount to work through, so let's get started, shall we? In Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you play as the character Eivor, which can be either male or female, and for this, the player chose the female Eivor. First off, I did note that the UI appears to be more refined than it was in Odyssey, with less of a focus on filling the entire lower third of your screen, although it does seem to follow along with the traditional ranged and melee power skills. You do have the ever-present scan feature, which also appears to highlight enemies in red. Now, I'm curious if this will be later refined to indicate critical hit areas for ranged and melee attacks. The reason why I'm curious about this is much later on in the footage during the battle against Rued, we see a highlighted area on his ankle for bow attacks indicating a weak point. You do still have the eyes in the sky bird mode, which it appears this bird is named Aiden, which is shown in this leaked footage, but only for a moment. So let's bring up a still image of that. We see in the lower right corner the stat points for East Anglia with accumulated wealth, mysteries, and secrets. And in the lower right corner, the image also shows options to be able to manually place and remove markers for easier navigation. Also, for those that want a nicer view of the countryside while traveling on horseback, we do have the cinematic view, which, while I'm certainly not a fan of this, I'm sure there will be some players that rather enjoy that sort of thing, and it is perfectly optional, so that is a bit of a pick-your-poison mechanic. The graphics in this work-in-progress version appear to be at the same level of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is no great surprise. So to say that there will be no graphical improvements would be supposition at best, as this is nowhere near the finished product. Now, in Odyssey, taking control of territories involved a final mass melee between the Athenian forces and Sparta. In Valhalla, it appears you instead engage in castle sieges that involve a myriad number of factors, including making use of a battering ram to knock down gates. The leaked footage shows your forces approaching by boat to Berg Castle, which shows off a modified version of the cover mechanic in Odyssey, except here you are protecting yourself against massive volleys of flaming arrows. And my own impression here is that of an extremely basic and uninvolving game mechanic that, yeah, it looks cool to see hundreds of flaming arrows flying at your face, but it seems to be nothing more than a QuickTime style event. Then, at another point when approaching the castle, we do have another brief moment that showcases that there is a ration mechanic, and it appears from viewing the entirety of the footage that rations may act as health potions, as denoted by the number 8 on the health meter down in the lower left corner, which also would indicate to me that such an inclusion would likely mean that Ubisoft are attempting to continue their move away from stealth mechanics being the primary focus, instead focusing on direct combat. Now, we see an example of this later on in the footage where the player eats some of those mushrooms to instantly gain back a large portion of health. So let's take a look at the combat. Now, first thing I did note is that within Valhalla, when combating shielded opponents, your attacks do damage and eventually destroy their shields, which would make sense as these are wooden shields, not like the giant metal objects we saw with Odyssey. We can also see in some areas where enemies will even make use of their own shields to bash you in an overhead swing to drive you to the ground. Then we have the Battering Ram, which it appears you can either allow the NPCs to take care of ramming down gates, or you can take direct control yourself and add Eivor's might to the ramming. Now, along with this, we do see some of what appear to be unfinished mechanics that include archers along the side firing arrows down on the people manning the ram, and pouring and igniting oil to burn the troops as well. The archers along the side are protected from their wall being scaled by spiked defenses, and the oil barrels that are such a danger to your battering ram can be destroyed rather easily with a couple of well-placed arrows. And in this segment, we actually see a better view of those oil barrels and what happens when you set your opponents ablaze. One thing to note is that currently the fire doesn't appear to damage them. However, as we can expect, this is a work-in-progress build. And this, while it is an interesting inclusion, seems exceptionally easy to defeat as it is currently implemented within the video. It seems nothing more than a minor inconvenience that will require you to expend a couple of arrows and nothing more, especially considering the units manning those barrels will be lit ablaze once you destroy them. It seems to me to be an ill-implemented mechanic that, while yes it does add some flavor, there's really not much to it. Now, another aspect to the combat mechanics that we see are when an opponent is locked prone, you can literally stomp on them for a fair amount of damage, giving them the old-fashioned Viking boot of dominance. It also includes a fun little sequence where, with a knocked down or off-balance opponent, you can stun attack and run them through with their own weapon, or in one instance, Eivor grabbed their shield up off the ground and used that to show them the error of their ways. Now, another new mechanic that we see is the ability for Eivor to pick up the weapon of the fallen and hurl them at other opponents. And then we have some overarching game components as well, such as world map, skills, and abilities. And in terms of the world map, we still only have a brief view, so we'll have to concentrate on a still image for a moment, where we see Berg Castle with 3 little gold bars on it, denoting that there is wealth available to be obtained, as well as what appears to be another structure to the southwest. And it would appear from the footage that looting the chest within the castle that you just captured, making it your territory, does not lower the strength of your faction in that region. Instead, wealth, as denoted here by a carbon ingot, increases the overall wealth of your clan. And then we have the skill tree, which I'll pause on a still image again for a moment where it explains for us the 2 types of nodes. The first is the stat node that improves your base fighting statistics such as increasing damage for melee or ranged weapon attacks, defense against ranged or melee attacks, as well as being able to increase your health meter and the like. Then we have main skills that unlock new moves for you to be able to execute. The inventory menu shows some notable improvements in the overall UI, but what was interesting to me here was not that the game relies on tiered quality of gear, that's certainly nothing new, but rather that you are no longer required to locate a blacksmith to be able to upgrade your equipment. Here you can do it right on the fly from your inventory, consuming resources to be able to do it right then and there. And we see 4 basic statistics in terms of the weapons: attack, speed, impact, and critical hit percentile. And for armor, it appears we have 3 stats being used: armor rating, evasion, and weight. In addition to that, it appears we also have the ability to turn off the visibility for armor and weapon items if you so choose, so you can make use of that to further allow for a more customized appearance. Now, my main thing here with Assassin's Creed and Ubisoft games in general is the highly formulaic nature of the games that Ubisoft creates. They are beautiful. The sound quality and music are generally amazing, but even with these variations that do help to keep the game mechanics fresh to a certain extent, I personally am only peripherally interested in this game because of that formulaic nature. Now, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which I dove back into a few weeks back, became exceptionally dull and uninteresting to me after about 30 hours. And yet, I still slogged through an additional 20 hours beyond that, and it became little more than wash, rinse, repeat mechanics. And I'm afraid that even with these inclusions and changes that Ubisoft have made here, the game will still become dull and uninteresting within a similar time frame. Now, granted, I am highly interested in the scenery and the locations because that is always something Ubisoft absolutely nails dead on, with some truly fantastic architecture and vistas being portrayed. But overall, looking at the gameplay, I'm left feeling like I do with every Assassin's Creed game, mildly unimpressed. However, for those interested in the game and its mechanics, I certainly don't want my own disinterest to push people away from purchasing it. A lot of people really love the Assassin's Creed franchise, and as such, I'm quite certain that they'll be rather excited to see some of these new mechanics. My main goal here isn't to convince or dissuade anyone from buying the game. It's more to merely provide additional information for those people to become better informed. After all, it's goddamn Vikings, and who doesn't love that? I've always held a personal interest in the mythology and history of the Norse culture. I'll most likely be picking up the game simply to see those views and vistas that are always so well done within these games, as well as my holding a desire to potentially review the game if possible. But as I said, I don't expect the game to be able to hold my interest for very long. But what about you? What are your thoughts on all of this? Do you see any mechanics you like, anything that disinterests you or might dissuade you? Let me know down in the comments below, and yes, I do read my comments. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.